Welcome to Smart Remarks, where we ask the question, just what's an illegitimate rape? So here at Smart Remarks, we've been following the whole Todd Akin situation. We have to ask, what's with all the Neanderthals? Akin is a Missouri congressman who's running for Senate, actually the front runner in that race, who over the weekend unwisely opened his yap to talk about rape, and he said this, quote, "If it's a legitimate rape, the female body has ways to try to shut the whole thing down." What? I got two questions about this. Number one, what's a legitimate rape? Do you have to be punched in the face or have a gun held to your head for it to be a legitimate rape? And the second is this idea that if you are legitimately forcibly raped, you can't possibly get pregnant because the body has ways to shut this whole thing down. What? Wrong. Women who are raped do get pregnant. But see here, what you have to understand is that guys like Akin and several others, many others perhaps in the pro-life movement, base their quote-unquote thinking on the assertions of guys like one Dr. Jack C. Wilkie, a former president of National Right to Life and involved in several other pro-life organizations, who in very scholarly fashion asserts that the number of women who get pregnant from rape is minuscule, almost unfathomable. And anyway, the bigger problem is that some women might claim to have been raped simply in order to get an abortion. Google Wilkie sometime, W-I-L-L-K-E. You might be taken a little bit aback by what you find. This is the intellectual foundation of what Akin said over the weekend. The story has obviously dominated the political media for several days now. By the time you see this, Akin might actually have dropped out of the race. And you know how that's playing amongst our conservative friends who, to a man, are, you know what's coming, outraged! They are outraged about all this because it just proves that the liberal media is biased against conservatives as always. Give it a rest. If you go to a site like Newsbusters, you'll see all sorts of stories about how, well, the media is reporting that Akin's a Republican, or the media is reporting that the GOP has an anti-abortion language in its platform. And it's also unfair. You know, there are many unattractive traits about conservatism, but perhaps the least attractive trait is its propensity to whine over liberal media bias. So if you're a conservative who don't understand why this issue is getting so much play, let me lay it out for you. Over the course of the past year, we've been immersed in what's been called a war on women. Comments and actual legislative attempts by Republicans to limit women's contraceptive choices, to smear women whom conservatives deem to be insufficiently chaste, and now to suggest that only some rape is legitimate, but even then you can't really get pregnant from it. It all adds up. And so if you're a conservative who, my advice to conservatives rather would be that if the coverage of this idiocy upsets you, maybe it's time to clamp down on the idiots. But there's the problem. The people who think like this are very useful, aren't they? They're reliably Republican. They give money. They knock on doors. They are valuable foot soldiers in the movement. They're populist outraged folks who sure might be less than enlightened when it comes to issues involving women or gays or anyone other than white men. You can't tick them off, though, and so what you do instead is insist that they don't define the party. But when those voices are calling Sandra Fluke a slut, when they're saying you can't possibly get pregnant from being raped, yes, they do come to define the party, and it's not simply because the media is covering the story. The problem is not that the media is reporting these comments. The problem is that the people who are in a position to do something about those who make this comment choose not to do so. They prefer to pretend instead that the pattern doesn't exist.